So today I am going to basically present the idea of this project, because while working on this project I realized that this is actually a very ambitious project and it could not be completed in a short span of time. So it needs a lot of time to work on. So I'm going to explain what I wish to do through this project. So basically, first of all, I am looking at the effect of deep philosophy as a group. It is a group of international members, participants, and they are what they're basically trying to do. So there are two aspects of this. uh, to begin with that, first of all, I would like to mention that this is very different, not very different, but this is different from philosophical counseling. This comes under philosophical practice, because counseling is usually one to one. This is not one to one, this is a group practice. And I think Ranley have outgrew his interest, or outgrew this motive of counseling long ago, and he left it and started this group of deep philosophy because he wanted to do something more with philosophy. And to understand that, we will start with this, that to understand that what is the effect or what is the outcome of any practice, we need to see what is going on there. And to see that, first we need to see that, when I'm talking about transformational, what actually transformation means. The word transformation itself has a presupposition behind it, that there has to be two parts to it, that there was something before it, and after this practice something else is coming out, something is happening here. So what kind of thing is happening, what kind of transformation it is, what is actually being transformed during this practice? State of mind, there is a paradigm shift, or there is some kind of new dimension is being added through this practice. What is actually happening through this practice? This is what we are going to see in next few slides. Also, the paradigm shift could be anything. It could be pragmatic, it could be existential, it could be metaphysical, it could be ethical. But the thing is, it is mostly indirect, because through the practice of philosophy, the nature of deep philosophy is basically like you wait, you contemplate on philosophical text. The main source is these historical philosophical texts, the primordial philosophical text. You sit on them, you contemplate on them. New kind of insights come to you, you develop a new kind of philosophical voice, or you write philosophical texts. So these impacts are usually indirect. Because the insights are basically indirect. They can make a direct change in your life, but the way they are coming in is not a very direct, concrete way. Because actually it is very difficult to explain. Putting metaphysical experiences into words is usually a very difficult task. But when we talk about philosophical practice, we are also talking about, we are trying to put all these things into daily life practices, the daily life issues. So that is these two things we were putting together, that one of them is a very metaphysical kind of practice, and the other is uh, concrete life based issues. And to comprehend both of these is difficult. That is why to explain what is the depth in the deep philosophy is very difficult task. So if it is still not clear that what is happening in deep philosophy, it is basically a group of people whom internationally meet on Zoom calls basically, and there are also philosophical retreats, and they contemplate on philosophical texts. There are basically different philosophical topics, and very concentrated, heavily philosophical, and there are different practices like after you read it in an interpretive way, you develop some kind of understanding. You have precious speaking in which you relate to those philosophical ideas with your own understanding of life, with your own experiences. And yes, and there are three dimensions to it. The theoretical dimension is the basic concepts and principles that are there, and then the historical dimension is basically the root. I think the text, basically the all the text are the dimensions and the inspirations behind it. The dimension of practice is basically when these are applied and these are talked about. So yeah, so the another important thing that I want to introduce here is perimeter. Since perimeter is something that Rand talks in his earlier philosophies. uh, he wrote his book Stepping Out of Plato's Cave, which distinctively mentions the transformative mode of philosophy, and how in one-to-one counseling also this transformation takes place through various case studies also. And in this book he also talks about how it happens in group forms. So to introduce perimeter is basically the way we understand world, the basic assumptions we have. It is like Plato's cave. We all have our own caves. We are all living in our set of assumptions, and we are basically imprisoned by it. And what philosophy in other aspects or other practices also is trying to do is trying to bring you out of this cave. It is trying to expand your worldview, expand your horizons, bring you to new realities. And how this happens in deep philosophy basically is, if you see that new philosophies are being introduced to you in a very in a way that uh, a monk would see philosophy, in a very contemplative way. These philosophies are being introduced. If you have a particular way of viewing, let's say, the meaning of existence, the meaning of crisis, so there will be four more texts with the same topic, but with different views. So basically, you are being introduced to new horizons, new ideologies. You are not rigid and fixed to whatever you understood it. And one of the most interesting thing is when perimeter is explained as game. If you see that in a game, what happens is there is limited resemblance of reality. It's restricted to artificial and rigid rules. So these are the rules through which I play this game. And this is what exactly happens with our perimeters, our basic assumptions, the few things we know about ourselves and we believe in, and we try to live our life through those rules and assumptions. The interesting thing about this is when you play a game, you are aware of two realities. One of them is that you are playing this game and you're aware that you're into this game. The other reality is this realization that there is a wider reality existing, that I am not just part of this game, but there is something else out in the world also, the wider reality. And I think this is what also gives an important you know an important giveaway of the future uh, pursuits of Ranlihav when he goes into the inner dimension of philosophy. Because this book was written before, uh, I think, all this started, the more philosophical, more spiritual uh, pursuits started. This is what I want to talk about, that exploring pyramidal understandings in philosophical self-reflection groups, because deep philosophy is basically a self-reflection group. And these understanding, although I have not been a part of in the uh, direct exercise of pyramidal, and working on these pyramidal understandings, because I don't think that it has been happening, because it can happen because new groups are starting, I think, from today only. And these are courses of deep philosophy, like they are working on the same topic. Like if there is a philosophical topic of love, there'll be three different sessions each week, and three different philosophers on which you'll contemplate on. So you have basically three different voices of the same concept. So whatever your own voice is, whatever you yourself believe, you will interact with those voices. You may agree, you may not agree, you may absorb it, but the thing is that your own horizon expands through it. So maybe through those courses this also happens, but for me this is very interesting, and something I want to investigate uh, through the participants of this group, is that the- how will this take place in a group, this philosophical practice. And there is a specific case study of this person, Daniel. And they in this book, Stepping Out of Plato's Cave. And what happens is, when this group meets and they're talking, and suddenly one of the participants asks Daniel that, have you ever noticed that you don't want to talk about yourself? Whenever the topic comes to you, you dodge off the topic, or you somehow try to get away with it. So first of all, he tries to get away with this also, but then he says that yes, it is true that I do this, but the main reason is because I don't like to be I don't like to be the center of attention where people talk about me. So they say, why is that a problem? Let's talk about it. Let's investigate. So he says, first of all, first his response is, maybe because in my childhood this happened. I was a object of th- I was object of criticism and investigation. He says, let's not go into the psychological aspect, and let's take a philosophical stance on this, and make the conversation about self exposure. So the topic of the conversation will be self exposure, and the shift is made to this philosophical paradigm. So it is more like, when you understand these patterns of how a person thinks, you have a choice to go either the psychological side or the philosophical side. So the psychological side, maybe you can work on what happened in the childhood, why is the behavior like this, how can it be treated. The other way is how it molded his uh, concepts, ideas, worldview, paradigm, and work on those paradigms. So the main concept shifted to the self exposure, and slowly the people started to talk about it. But the thing is, it needs a lot of responsibility and experience, because we can mess up people. If you don't have the experience, you are not talking with the responsibility. This is something sensitive. So basically, this is a very nice case study. Then they come up to this this conversation about, they come up with different ideas, like Sattre's idea of how he's ashamed to be objectified by another person's look, uh, being a nothing. He says, the concept of other, Nietzsche's idea of, you must not want to see everything. These are the different ideas that came up, and they discussed it, to add on to a richer understanding of this person's paradigm or parameter, to expand it. So this was a way of dealing with you know the pattern of a person's thinking philosophically through a group, a self reflection group. And another interesting thing that comes up is that this person says that now I see my attitude and I see my assumption, the assumption he works. So there's another aspect of critical thinking, that now he is thinking clearly, he is recognizing the way he thinks and acts on it. So he comes up with this assumption that, that I guess this is my hidden assumption, that if I am a passive receiver, then I stop being somebody anymore. I exist only if I give, help, or act. So this concept of existence is coming by giving. So always anxious to give. If he's receiving, he'll be anxious that, oh, I'm not existing. So these are some interesting ideas. So for another person also in the same group, then another person relates to it and says, oh yes, it's for me also. I can only exist when I act. For me, when I stop being an person who acts, I stop existing. And then comes in the idea of Kierkegaard's understanding of what it means to exist. So this was a way to deal with patterns of thinking and issues in a philosophical way. But the problem is that in deep philosophy, what happens that when we are going into philosophical ideas, uh, we need to move away from some of the personal issues, personal predicaments, because it somewhat starts to mix with psychology. It is very difficult to draw the line that where you are going. And if there are people who are very strict, no, 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 we don't want to go towards psychology, then it becomes difficult. So the more spiritual and philosophical nature of deep philosophy is evident at this point. But I think that this is the philosophy is still growing and coming up with new things. So there is a transformational effect. It could be like in spiritual terms, it could be in this uh, in this parametral terms, where your understanding, your ideas become clear. But it is not at this point directly included in the group. It has not been practiced in the group. I have taken this from Ran Lehav's philosophy only, his book only. But maybe it will happen. And they are proposing these ideas. They are still working on it. So yes, these were the things. And the second thing that I proposed in my abstract was comparison of deep philosophy with other approaches. There are two problems with it which I realized, came across. First, I don't know if I can say deep philosophy's approach. I am not sure. Because I don't know what a philosophical practice approach is. And it is a fundamental question in itself which needs to worked on, that what approach is, what is a philosophical practice approach is. And the second is that I realize I don't know much of much other approaches. I only know another one, that is Oscar Brunife's approach. And that is because I'm part of his course now. And these are two very different, they're poles apart. One of them is purely reason and very different. And deep philosophy is trying to go well from reason and inside yourself. So I cannot compare uh, deep philosophy with other forms, because I believe I'm not an expert in these. And I would like to talk about it only then, when I am expert on these, or I have a good amount of experience. Because I think practicing philosophy is something that needs experience. The theory is not going to help you unless and until you have experience. If you sit in front of somebody and you say that I'm going to practice philosophy, I don't think theory is going to do that for you. I think experience is going to do that for you. That is my personal experience only. So yes, thank you.